Disneyland, can someone play some Disney music on their phone?
Hello everyone, welcome back to the DeFi stage. And from now on until 6 p.m., we invited lots of DeFi protocols, like very famous ones. And this afternoon, we'll be all focusing on about derivatives and risk management. So let's welcome our first speaker, Yaron from B.Protocol, and he'll be talking about the new risk oracle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming back from lunch. So yeah, I will talk about a new activity we have in B.Protocol, which is about removing the human factor from risk management, which is right now very human intense work in most of DeFi. So yeah, what is risk management in general? You know, so there are a lot of risk aspects to finance. In DeFi, people are still very much focused on smart contract security risk. But here the focus is more about economic risk, especially in the traditional worlds. It's about the defaults of loans. In the DeFi world, it is around setting certain parameters and LTV values to lending market. So in the traditional world, typically you need to rate, you know, how risky a loan is, how is it safe to give a loan to a country, an institution, etc. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and already in the traditional world, this is very notorious, known to have a lot of political aspects in it. American agencies tend to give, you know, very strong rating to American institutions, to American government. The 2008 subprime crisis allegedly was contributed a lot by bad ranking, which was not only, you know, some kind of calculation mistake, but some would argue, you know, it was biased from political opinions and a lot of human factors into it. And of course, you know, from the 2008 crisis, Bitcoin and crypto came. But of course, risk management in crypto still suffers, or at least potentially could suffer from the same issues. Recent bankruptcy we saw, for example, it was reported that Genesis Trading didn't liquidate 3 Arrow Capital loans because, you know, it had some hope that the price of grayscale Bitcoin will go up and eventually 3 Arrow will become solvent again. FTX, you know, posed the liquidation to Alameda. This is, of course, you know, outright fraud. It was not just bad risk management, but again, once, and you know, maybe the 3 Arrow story is more reflecting, you know, you open the door to humans to get these decisions. Very often these decisions make a lot of sense, but once the risk is materialized, you know, there's no way back, and then humans, being humans, try to cover for it and often end up in a bad result. This happens not only in crypto. There was a recent incident with the London Metal Exchange, but this can, you know, typically happens in, you know, most of the exchanges. At certain point, they decide to freeze the market. As a byproduct of it, some of the big traders there was not got liquidated. You know, we will never know what was the true cause for pausing it. Was it really political, or some insolvency issues? But this problem definitely arises also in traditional finance as well. And then you would expect, okay, but DeFi is all about transparency. This would never happen in DeFi. You know, all the major DeFi lending markets are very much solvent. So this is an example from the last USDC DPEG. This is from Aave Forum. So this is, something Gantland recommended, but this is definitely not something against Gantland. The recommendation, made perfect sense. But so here, community members for this purpose recommended to pause the protocol and stop liquidations because of the USDC depegging. And fully aware that also other positions could incur bad debt. And yeah, as a community member, this is perfectly something reasonable to do. There are upsides, downsides. From a trading perspective, it might was the best trading decision, factoring all the risk and reward. And Gantland are definitely smart people. Also pretty much, they are kind of a third-party service, so also no hidden agenda. But eventually, this is something humans have to decide on. The DAO has to decide on. While Gantland might be perfectly objective, of course, every token or every Aave token holder has their own agenda, their own incentives, which might be inside or outside Aave itself. And the outcome eventually can be, again, insolvency when you freeze liquidations, so either things get better or get worse later. It can go both ways. And even in DeFi, we see that eventually human and people and DAOs are the ones who are taking the decisions. So some background on myself. So I'm the founder of B.Protocol. I'm also a contributor to the Risk DAO. In the Risk DAO, we do give risk analysis services to lending markets. So I am also part of the human factor. So this is just to say that, humans are not bad. I definitely believe that at this point, the optimal way is to get services, from, living individuals and not only from software. But in B.Protocol, it's definitely something, we aim to automate, and eventually eliminate as much as possible the human factor of everything and replace people, including ourselves, with some kind of formula. So more background on myself. I was CTO of Kyber Network. Kyber Network was one of the first on-chain swap services, which gave very similar user experience as Uniswap. But instead of a formula, we had a very big team of quants and traders where we actually quoted prices, did a lot of on-chain market making, algorithmic market making, not with a formula, and only to eventually replace everything also with a formula there. And there it was, a bit of similar considerations in the sense that our market making was, more efficient to some extent, but eventually, replacing humans with software has a lot of also upside and kind of promise into it. So one course on, what is even economic risk management in DeFi. So this is just the basic. There's a huge layer of smart contract risk and auditing, which is more of classic security. But in the context of lending markets, so risk management is a lot about keeping the lending market solvent, making sure that users will be able to repay their loans. So it's a lot about setting the loan-to-value parameter, how much you can borrow against certain collateral, when you will get liquidated, what will be the interest rate. This, of course, has both quantitative considerations, such as the market conditions, also qualitative considerations, such as the safety of the price oracle, how decentralized the asset is, whether it is controlled by some multi-sig or even EOA, or whether it is controlled by some decentralized governance, etc. So this is a pretty maybe scary diagram, but still very high-level one. So it mostly to show that almost in every step of the way you have so-called human intervention, which is again perfectly fine, because you can argue, as the Aave community has the right to do what Aave token holders want to do. Further, they might, know or familiar with the Aave ecosystem and community much better than, smart contract can ever be. Also, right, in principle, it's definitely the right to kind of balance the risk-reward. Eventually, the more risky you will become, potentially your revenue will increase. And this is definitely something, a person with, free want should be able to decide. However, the outcomes, so it might be very kind of optimal to have as a community, as a DAO, but eventually as a user, you get something that is much more, so it's not centralized because many people control it, but it very resembles to how TradeFi is working. And basically, you get something like on-chain finance rather than DeFi. So you just replace all the, not even evil actors, but all the political actors with a new political actors. You do have a bit of more transparency, but again, not much at the end of the day. And still when, like in times of crisis, if you let human, make the decision, then it might be right, it might be wrong. It's in a way less fair and less transparent. And as a user, you don't really, you don't have the guarantee of how things will be executed, as opposed to Uniswap user or user in other smart contracts. So the question is, can we replace humans with a formula? So here, also coming from the risk DAO, and we are in the trenches. We do give paid services to platforms. We don't think that kind of in the near future, automated service or a smart contract or a formula will be able to outperform human services. So it will definitely have to come on the expense of precision, potentially even additional risk. But again, if you take Uniswap as the analogy, so we do think it has an added value, and we do think that eventually part of the DeFi revolution is that, and without that, it won't be really DeFi. It would be some kind of on-chain finance, which by the way might also have like a room, like a right of its own, and might even be very big. But if we really want to follow, like the DeFi ethos, we want devs to be, or eventually piece of code, to do the execution, give guarantees to the user, make things more predictable. Then we think this is this will eventually be one of the dominating approaches. So the thing right now, there are still a lot of missing, building blocks to do it, and of course, research and confidence are one major issue there. But we do believe, like the room of risk service vendors is growing. There are a lot of smart people in the field. So it should be kind of feasible to kind of approximate and find, get into a consensus around standard formulas for risk, and developing, completely open source smart contracts that could be used by anyone. Another missing piece is the actual data. Okay, so right now, lending markets rely only on spot price data from Chainlink or other vendors. A lot of risk-related data is currently not on-chain. For example, DEX liquidity, but also price volatility, other aspects. And this is our focus right now on B.Protocol, is kind of identifying what are the important inputs for risk analysis and to put them on-chain in a decentralized manner. The first use case which we will launch, and it will be highly experimental, also highly centralized, will be some kind of LTV recommendation engine where, again, at a very high level, it will just will be able to support and to give collateral factor recommendations into an asset based on some on-chain data that we will upload and maintain. Again, this will initially be very experimental, also very simplified. So initially, we will recommend people to use it only as kind of an indicator, and not actually, like build smart contracts around it. But the vision is totally for the long run to be able to automate all these things, to be able to replace a lot of the DAO decisions by automated smart contract decisions. And so this will be kind of a gradual process where, confidence will have to be built, and initially, human decisions will have to be taken very frequently. But this kind of presentation will make things, much more transparent and can give rise to semi-automated process, and then eventually to a fully automated one. So again, high-level architecture here could be that relevant data feeds are put on the blockchain, such as liquidity and volatility. The DAO or someone, does set some pre-approved template for calculating the TVL with some formula. Also potentially putting some risk, some risk appetite factor there, and then the LTVs on the lending market are adjusted automatically or maybe semi-automatically with some veto rights. Again, even in this initial phase, the DAO will still have full control. But at least here it will be very obvious and very observable whenever the DAO actually deviates from the standard policy. Long-term use case, we can envision a future where even listing decisions in a lending market are taken automatically or semi-automatically by a smart contract, where the DAO only has to decide on some minimum requirements, such as historical liquidity, historical volatility, and then get listed. Of course, for the foreseeable future, certain aspects, such as, whether the new asset smart contract is safe or not, whether the asset team will, rug pull. So, we are still long way from even knowing how to make these decisions, kind of more automated and objectives. But this is definitely part of the vision. But again, starting with some quantitative metrics is the way to start there, in our opinion. So some comparison, like between the two approaches. So right now, the process is very political. And again, politics also have upsides, not only downsides. So it does go both ways, but very much against the DeFi ethos. The process right now is also very manual. which could also, both can give rise to some mistakes. And actually, we saw some configuration errors, actually both on Aave and I think Moonwell or something, that actually results, just missed few decimals, and as a result, few tens of thousands of dollars got liquidated just because of human errors. But manual also typically mean very governance heavy. Right now, the kind of standard is that every such change has to go through a governance vote. Governance vote typically has a time lock. The vote itself might take, a few days. You need a quorum for every such vote. So this is very heavy, and also prevents real-time responses, and this is something we saw. So we saw it on Aave. They had to liquidate a lot of CRV, and the DAO cannot respond in less than 5 days time, I think there. Okay, so it's both very tedious and both prevent the ability to respond in real time. So after that, so Aave has some committee now with some multi-sig that can respond quicker, but then it gives rise to the fact that okay, now it's maybe more opaque because okay, sure you have a multi-sig and sure you have forum discussions on what to do and when. But eventually, it's all about humans and, who might behave differently because, not because they are bad, but because they think it makes more sense to kind of deviate from certain policy, which again might be more optimal, but not very DeFi-like and, decrease the predictability of everything. So with Risk Oracle, with automation, so we have a more neutral risk assessment. It could be better, could be worse, but it's neutral and fair. It's automated, so you can respond in a timely manner. And has all the DeFi properties that we are all eventually here for: self-execution, transparency, decentralization. So yeah, if you want to learn more, so check us out at B.Protocol.org. Also, RiskDAO kind of concentrate a lot of the actual research. B.Protocol is more the decentralization layer. I'm in Taipei until Wednesday, so also reach out to me either on Telegram or Twitter. And yeah, with that, I'm concluding. And if there are any questions.
Any questions?
So the first use case you gave was working with lending platforms to set the loan-to-value. Could this be adapted to set the LTV for decentralized derivative protocols?
Yeah, so right now most of our research is focused on lending and stablecoins. Yeah, but definitely as a vision, yeah, definitely also for derivatives. Also in the RiskDAO, like as a service, we also analyze derivative. In terms of the protocol and making it automated, so it's definitely part of the vision. Right now, we are mostly focused on lending though, but yeah, definitely also derivatives.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If no, let's applause again.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Yaron.